The Korthax Empire had ruled the eastern spiral arm of the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their ships moved through space like silver daggers, cutting through the darkness with engines that bent reality itself. Their weapons could turn entire planets into clouds of dust. Their soldiers stood 3 meters tall, with 4 arms that could crush steel and eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. Commander Jathik stood on the bridge of the warship Eternal Dominion, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly on the viewing screen. Earth, the humans called it. A pathetic little world circling an unremarkable star. The intelligence report said the humans had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had barely explored their own solar system when Korthax scouts found them. "A primitive species," Jathik said to his second officer. "They still fight among themselves. They haven't even unified their own planet under one government." The second officer, a younger warrior named Dravik, nodded agreement. "The Council has authorized full annexation. The humans will serve the Empire or be eliminated." Jathik felt satisfaction pulse through his warrior's heart. Another easy conquest. Another world added to Korthax's glory. He had led 40 successful campaigns against lesser species. The humans would be number 41. 3 Korthax battlecruisers entered Earth's orbit without any attempt at stealth. They wanted the humans to see them, to understand how completely they were outmatched. Within minutes, every radar station on Earth detected the massive ships. Within an hour, every government on the planet knew they were no longer alone in the universe. The Korthax transmitted their message in every human language simultaneously. Jathik's face appeared on every screen, every television, every phone across the entire planet. "Humans of Earth," his voice thundered through translation software, "your world now belongs to the Korthax Empire. You will submit to our authority. You will provide workers for our factories and soldiers for our armies. You will give us 20% of your resources immediately, and more as we require. Resist, and your cities will burn. You have 1 planetary rotation to respond with your surrender." Jathik expected panic. He expected chaos. He expected the humans to fight among themselves about who would have the honor of bowing first. What he didn't expect was silence. For 6 hours, Earth was completely quiet. No transmissions, no communications, no response at all. Then the human ships came. They weren't impressive ships. Compared to Korthax battlecruisers, they looked like toys. Crude metal constructions with primitive fusion drives and missile systems that the Korthax had abandoned 5,000 years ago. 12 human ships formed up between Earth and the Korthax fleet. Jathik laughed when he saw them. "They send their entire military to face us? 12 ships?" "Actually, Commander," Dravik checked his sensors, "our intelligence indicates humans have approximately 200 military vessels. These 12 appear to be volunteers." "Volunteers to die," Jathik said. He opened a channel to the human fleet. "This is your final warning. Return to your planet and begin preparations for integration into the Empire. Continue this foolish resistance and you will all perish." A human face appeared on his screen. A female with dark skin and gray hair, wearing a uniform covered in medals and insignia. She looked old for a warrior, but her eyes held something Jathik recognized instantly. He had seen it in his own reflection after 100 battles. This human was dangerous. "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Fleet," the woman said calmly. "You've made a mistake coming here. You should leave now while you still can." Jathik laughed again. "Your 12 ships against our 3 battle cruisers? Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your missiles cannot touch our armor. You are insects attempting to fight a storm." "We're not insects," Admiral Chen said. "We're humans. There's a difference. We have a saying on Earth. You probably won't understand it, but I'll share it anyway. You mess with the bull, you get the horns." Jathik had no idea what a bull was. He didn't care. "Attack!" he ordered his fleet. The Korthax opened fire with plasma cannons that could vaporize a city in a single blast. The beams lanced through space toward the human ships. The humans scattered, their vessels moving with surprising agility despite their primitive appearance. Most of the shots missed. The few that connected splashed against defensive screens that somehow held, at least for a few seconds. The human ships returned fire. Their missiles were slow and obvious. Korthax point defense systems swatted them from space like annoying flies. Their railguns fired solid projectiles that bounced harmlessly off Korthax shields. Pathetic, Jathic muttered. End this quickly. But the humans didn't retreat. Instead, they accelerated toward the Korthax fleet. 6 ships broke left, while 6 went right, splitting the Korthax formation. They flew in patterns that seemed random, but somehow avoided most incoming fire. They're trying to close the distance, Dravik reported. But why? Their close-range weapons are even weaker than their missiles. Jathic understood first. They're going to ram us. The fools plan to sacrifice themselves. But ramming didn't happen. As the human ships screamed past the Korthax battlecruisers, they deployed thousands of small objects, not missiles, not bombs, just tiny metal cubes, each no bigger than a human fist. "What are those?" Jathic demanded. His sensors officer worked frantically at his console. "I don't know, Commander. They're just floating there. They're not doing anything." The human ships regrouped at a safe distance. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen again, and this time she was smiling. "Those little cubes are something we invented about 50 years ago," she said. "We call them kinetic mines. They're equipped with tiny sensors and small positioning thrusters. Each one contains about 2 kilograms of a very dense metal we call tungsten. Right now they're calculating trajectories and waiting." "Waiting for what?" Jathic asked, though he had a terrible suspicion he already knew. "Waiting for you to move," Chen said. "Your ships are powerful, Commander, but they're also massive. It takes time for something that big to change velocity or direction. Those mines know your speed, your heading, and your mass. They've already calculated everywhere you could possibly go in the next 10 minutes. Jathic checked his tactical display. The thousands of tiny mines had spread out, forming a 3-dimensional web around his fleet. Any direction he moved, dozens of them would be in his path. "They're just tiny pieces of metal," he said. "They can't hurt us." "Each mine has a small thruster that will accelerate it to approximately 30% of light speed," Chen explained, still smiling. "At that velocity, 2 kilograms of tungsten hits with more force than your plasma cannons, and we deployed 10,000 of them. Even your shields can't stop that much kinetic energy." Jathic felt his confidence crack. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Chen shrugged. "There's one way to find out. Move your ships." For the first time in his military career, Jathic hesitated. He ran simulations in his head. If the humans were telling the truth, any movement would trigger a devastating barrage. His shields could maybe stop 100 impacts. But 1,000? 10,000? "We could retreat," Dravik suggested quietly. "A Korthax warrior does not retreat," Jathic snarled. But privately, he was reconsidering his options. This was supposed to be an easy conquest. The humans were primitive. The intelligence reports had said so. The intelligence reports had been wrong. "I have a proposal," Admiral Chen said. "You leave our system immediately. You tell your empire that Earth is not interested in joining. You never come back. If you do that, we'll deactivate the mines and let you go." "And if we refuse?" Jathic asked. Chen's smile disappeared. "Then you'll find out just how creative humans can be when someone threatens our home. Those mines are just the opening move, Commander. We have 11 more ships out there, and each one is carrying something different. Want to see what else we invented?" Jathic studied the human admiral. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't threatening. She was simply stating facts, the way a warrior described the sharpness of a blade. "Why only 12 ships?" he asked. Why not send your entire fleet? Because we're still deciding whether you're worth the ammunition, Chen replied. Right now, you're just an annoyance. Keep pushing, and you become a problem. We're very good at solving problems. Jatek looked at his tactical display again. 3 battlecruisers against 12 primitive ships, and somehow the humans had gained the advantage. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was also undeniable. This isn't over, Jatek said. The Korthax Empire has millions of warriors, thousands of ships. We will return with a force you cannot possibly resist. Maybe, Chen acknowledged. But you personally won't be part of it, because if you don't leave in the next 60 seconds, you won't be alive to make reports to your empire. She meant it. Jatek could see it in her eyes. This human would absolutely destroy his entire fleet if he gave her a reason. Dravik, he said quietly, plot a course out of the system, maximum speed. But, Commander, do it! The Korthax battlecruisers began to turn, their massive engines powering up for the jump to faster-than-light speeds. As they moved, hundreds of the human mines activated, their thrusters firing. But they didn't attack. They simply moved aside, clearing a path for the Korthax retreat. We'll be back, Jatek transmitted to the human fleet. We'll be ready, Admiral Chen replied. The Korthax ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system behind. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Think they'll actually come back? Her tactical officer asked. Oh, they'll be back, Chen said. The question is how many they'll bring and how long it'll take them to mobilize. We really kicked a hornet's nest, didn't we? Yep. Chen pulled up a star chart showing the territory of the Korthax Empire. It was vast, encompassing hundreds of systems. But here's what they don't understand about humans. We don't back down from bullies. We never have. That's why we're still here after millions of years of evolution. The minds were brilliant, the tactical officer said. Whose idea was that? Dr. Okafor from the Kenyan Space Agency. She presented it to the Defense Council 5 years ago. Most people thought it was too expensive to actually build. Turns out having an alien threat really loosens the budget constraints. How many do we actually have? Chen smiled. About 10,000, like I said, plus another 90,000 in production. If the Korthax give us 6 months, we can mine every approach vector to Earth so thoroughly that even a small scout ship couldn't get through. She pulled up footage of the brief battle, watching the Korthax ships retreat. They had won this round, but it was only the beginning. The Korthax Empire had been conquering species for 12,000 years. They wouldn't accept defeat easily, but humanity had been fighting for survival for much longer than that. Every predator that had ever hunted humans, from saber-toothed cats to microscopic diseases, had learned the same lesson the Korthax were just beginning to understand. Humans didn't give up. Humans didn't surrender. Humans adapted, learned, and fought back with everything they had. The Korthax had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that primitive technology meant primitive thinking. They had assumed that a divided world meant a weak species. They had assumed that youth as a spacefaring civilization meant inexperience in warfare. All their assumptions had been wrong. Admiral Chen opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. This is Admiral Chen reporting. The Korthax fleet has retreated. Earth remains secure. But we need to assume they'll return with reinforcements. I'm recommending we accelerate all defensive projects and reach out to any other species in range. If the Korthax have been bullying the galaxy for thousands of years, we probably aren't the first species to want them stopped. Acknowledged, Command responded. Well done, Admiral. The whole planet was watching. Chen nodded. The whole planet. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth had watched the same event simultaneously. Every human had seen alien ships threaten their world. Every human had watched 12 ships face down a superior force. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the push humanity needed to finally unite. Not because some government forced them to, but because they all face the same threat, the same challenge. The Korthax had wanted to conquer Earth. Instead, they might have accidentally done something no human leader had ever accomplished. They might have given humanity a common enemy, a common purpose, a reason to stop fighting among themselves and work together. If so, that might be the Korthax's biggest mistake of all. Commander Jothik stood before the Korthax High Council, his forearms locked in a posture of formal attention. The council chamber was carved from a single piece of black stone, taken from the first world the Korthax had ever conquered. 12,000 years of military victory had been celebrated in this room. Today, Jothik was explaining his first defeat. "The humans deployed a weapon system we had never encountered," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Kinetic mines capable of relativistic acceleration. Our intelligence had no data on such technology." Supreme Commander Vakthul, eldest of the council members, leaned forward in his throne. His scales had faded to pale gray with age, but his eyes remained sharp. "You retreated from 12 primitive vessels." "I preserved 3 battlecruisers and their crews," Jothik corrected. "A tactical withdrawal to reassess the situation." "It sounds like cowardice." Jothik's pride flared, but he controlled it. "With respect, Supreme Commander, it was practical military strategy. The humans demonstrated technological capabilities that exceeded our intelligence reports. They also demonstrated a willingness to die defending their world. That combination made them more dangerous than anticipated." Another council member, War Mistress Shakira, spoke up. "You're saying the humans are a legitimate threat?" "I'm saying they're unpredictable," Jothik replied. "Every species we've conquered followed predictable patterns. They panicked, they negotiated, they eventually submitted. The humans did none of those things. They watched us enter their system, analyzed our capabilities in hours, and deployed a weapon specifically designed to counter our advantages. Then we destroy them," Vakthul said simply. "We gather a proper invasion force and turn their planet to ash." "That may not be advisable," Jothik said carefully. "The humans occupy a strategic location between 3 major trade routes. If we destroy their world, we gain nothing. If we conquer it, we gain a valuable position and whatever technology they've developed." Shakira's eyes narrowed. "You want another chance to face them." "I want the Empire to approach this conquest properly," Jothik said. "Send a fleet large enough that the humans cannot resist, but also send diplomats. Give them a chance to join the Empire willingly. Some species fight harder when given no choice." Vakthul considered this. "How large a fleet?" 50 battlecruisers, 300 support vessels, ground forces sufficient to occupy their major cities. Jothik had spent 6 weeks calculating the numbers. Overwhelming force combined with offers of peace. Show them resistance is futile, but cooperation is rewarded. The council deliberated in their ancient language, a series of clicks and hisses that predated the Korthax's advancement to space travel. Finally, Vakthul spoke. "Your proposal is accepted. You will command the invasion fleet. You have 6 months to assemble your forces and break the humans. Fail, and you will never command again." Jothik bowed deeply. "I will not fail." But as he left the council chamber, doubt gnawed at his certainty. The human admiral's face haunted his thoughts. She had been calm when she should have been terrified, confident when she should have been desperate. What kind of species produced warriors like that? 6 months later, the Korthax invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 battle cruisers, arranged in attack formation, hundreds of support vessels carrying troops, supplies, and enough firepower to shatter continents. The largest military force the Empire had assembled in 300 years. Jothik stood on the bridge of his flagship, the pride of Korthax. Sensors immediately began scanning the inner system, searching for the human fleet. "Contact," his sensor officer reported. Multiple human vessels detected. They've formed a defensive perimeter around their planet. How many ships? 267, Commander. It appears to be their entire military. Jathik felt satisfaction pulse through him. They're committing everything to defend their homeworld, a desperate strategy. But Dravik, now his chief tactical officer, looked worried. Commander, 6 months ago they sent only 12 ships against us. Now they're deploying everything. Why the change in strategy? Because they know they cannot win, Jathik said. They're making a final stand. The fleet advanced slowly, maintaining perfect formation. Jathik opened a channel to Earth, broadcasting on all frequencies. Humans of Earth, this is Commander Jathik of the Korthax Empire. 6 months ago, you rejected our generous offer to join the Empire. Today, you face the consequences of that decision. We have brought a fleet that cannot be defeated. Surrender immediately, and your world will be spared. Resist, and your cities will burn. Your people will be enslaved, and your planet will serve as a warning to others who defy us. He waited for a response. None came. They're ignoring us again, Dravik said nervously. It doesn't matter. Jathik studied the tactical display. The human fleet looked impressive in numbers, but their ships were still primitive. Begin the attack. Target their largest vessels first. Show them the futility of resistance. The Korthax fleet opened fire. Plasma cannons blazed across the distance, thousands of shots converging on the human fleet. The humans scattered, their ships breaking formation and accelerating in different directions. But they didn't retreat. Instead, the entire human fleet accelerated toward the Korthax formation at maximum speed. They're charging us? Jathik couldn't believe it. All of them? Confirmed, Dravik said. All human vessels are on intercept courses. And Commander, they're deploying more of those kinetic mines. How many? Thousands. No, tens of thousands. They're seeding the entire battle space. Jathik's confidence wavered. Evasive maneuvers. Maintain formation but avoid the mine clouds. The massive Korthax fleet began to shift, trying to find clear lanes of approach. But the humans had planned for this. The mines weren't random. They formed corridors, channels that forced the Korthax ships into predictable paths. Then the human ships did something unexpected. They stopped running. Every vessel turned to face the Korthax fleet and opened fire simultaneously. Not with missiles, not with rail guns, with something new. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the human ships, brilliant blue-white streams that cut through space like laser scalpels. Where they hit Korthax shields, the energy didn't splash off. It burned through, boring holes in the defensive screens. "What is that?" Jathik demanded. "Particle beams," his science officer reported, frantically analyzing the data. Extremely focused streams of charged particles accelerated to near-light speed. They're using the same principle as our plasma weapons, but with much higher energy concentration. "That's not possible," Jathik said. "That technology requires massive power generation," the science officer finished. "Yes, the humans appear to have made significant advances in reactor technology." The human beams hammered at the Korthax shields. One by one, defensive screens began to fail. The first Korthax battlecruiser to lose its shields took a direct hit from 3 human vessels firing in concert. The particle beams cut through armor like it was paper, slicing the massive warship into pieces. "Return fire," Jathik ordered. "All vessels, concentrate your fire on the human ships." But the humans were already moving again. They broke into smaller groups, each one targeting a different Korthax ship. They moved in coordinated patterns, covering each other, focusing their fire on ships with damaged shields. Another battlecruiser exploded, then another. "How many have we lost?" Jathik asked, though he dreaded the answer. 7 destroyed, 12 with critical damage, Dravik reported, and the humans have only lost 19 ships. "Commander, we're losing." "That's impossible." But even as Jathic said it, he knew it was true. The tactical display showed the story clearly. The Korthax had superior numbers and firepower, but the humans fought with a precision and creativity that turned every advantage into a liability. A communication channel opened, and Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, and there was a fresh burn scar on her left cheek, but she was smiling. "Hello again, Commander," she said. "Miss me?" "Your weapons cannot defeat our entire fleet," Jathic said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're right," Chen agreed. "These weapons can't defeat your entire fleet, but they don't have to." She gestured off-screen, and the tactical display updated with new contacts. "Because we're not alone anymore." 3 more fleets appeared on the sensors. Not human ships. These were vessels from species Jathic recognized: the Vaxil Collective, the Dren Federation, the Yothel Republic, all species the Korthax had conquered or threatened over the centuries. "While you were gathering your invasion force, we were talking to your neighbors," Chen explained. "Turns out a lot of species are tired of Korthax aggression. They just needed someone to throw the first punch. So we did." "They're all transmitting the same message," the communications officer reported. "They're demanding the Korthax fleet leave Earth immediately or face a combined military response." Jathic stared at the tactical display. His invasion force suddenly looked much smaller. The combined fleets outnumbered him 3-1, and if they all had weapons like the humans... "This is your last chance," Admiral Chen said. "Leave now, or we stop playing nice." "Playing nice?" Jathic looked at his casualties. "You've destroyed 9 of my battlecruisers." "And you've killed 4,000 of my people," Chen replied coldly. 9 ships is me being restrained. Keep pushing, and you'll see what humans do when we stop caring about mercy." She meant it. Jathic could see it in her eyes. This human would absolutely annihilate his entire fleet if he gave her a reason. And now she had allies to help her do it. "All vessels," he said quietly. "Retreat to hyperspace jump distance. We're leaving." "Commander, the Council will—" "The Council isn't here," Jathic snapped. "I am, and I'm not sacrificing this entire fleet for pride. Retreat. Now." The Korthax fleet turned and burned at maximum acceleration, desperate to reach the safe distance needed for hyperspace jumps. The human fleet didn't pursue, but they didn't need to. Their point had been made. As the pride of Korthax reached jump distance, Jathic took one last look at Earth on the viewing screen. The small blue planet had just humiliated the greatest military force in the galaxy, twice. "Set course for home," he ordered, "and someone find out everything we can about human history. I want to know what kind of species we're dealing with." Dravik brought up the research his intelligence team had compiled. "I've already started, Commander. The humans have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. They've had 2 major global conflicts just in the last 100 years. They've developed thousands of different fighting styles and strategies, and according to their own historical records, they've survived multiple extinction-level events." "What kind of events?" "Ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed significant portions of their population, and each time, they adapted and survived." Jathic processed this information. "They're a species evolved for survival in a hostile environment." "More than that," Dravik said. "They're a species that sees obstacles as challenges to overcome. Every time something nearly destroys them, they come back stronger. It's in their fundamental nature. And we just gave them a reason to see us as an obstacle." "Yes, Commander." The pride of Korthax jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. In the empty space where the battle had occurred, debris from destroyed ships floated silently. 9 Korthax battlecruisers, 19 human vessels, and the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the last Korthax ship vanish from sensors. Her crew erupted in cheers, celebrating their victory. But Chen didn't celebrate. She pulled up casualty reports and started reading names. 4,000 people had died defending Earth today. 4,000 people who wouldn't go home to their families. The price of victory was always measured in loss. "Admiral," her communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving messages from the Allied fleets. They want to discuss forming a permanent defensive alliance." "Tell them I'll meet with their commanders tomorrow," Chen said, "after we've recovered our fallen." She thought about Commander Jothic and wondered if he understood what had really happened here today. The battle wasn't just about military tactics or superior weapons. It was about what species fight for. The Korthax fought for empire, for conquest, for glory. They were warriors, certainly, but their motivation was expansion and domination. Humans fought for survival, for home, for the people they loved. And that made all the difference, because a species fighting for survival would use every tool, every trick, every desperate strategy to win. They would sacrifice, adapt, and endure. The Korthax had challenged humanity, expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened something they didn't understand. They had united a divided world and given humanity a common purpose. They had forced humans to reach out to other species and build alliances. They had, in trying to conquer Earth, accidentally created the foundation for something much more dangerous. An alliance of species willing to stand together against aggression. A coalition built not on conquest, but on mutual defense. The Korthax Empire had ruled through fear and superior force for 12,000 years. But fear only works until someone refuses to be afraid. And superior force only matters until someone finds a way to neutralize it. Humanity had done both, and now other species were watching, learning, hoping. The galaxy was changing, and it had all started because one alien species had challenged humanity and suffered the consequences. 3 years had passed since the second battle at Earth. The galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The alliance that Admiral Chen had helped forge now included 17 different species, all united under one principle. No more conquest, no more forced annexation, no more empires built on the suffering of others. They called themselves the Coalition of Free Worlds. The Korthax Empire had not taken these developments well. Their ancient dominance was crumbling. Worlds they had controlled for thousands of years were declaring independence. Species that had paid tribute for generations were refusing to send resources. The great empire was fracturing, and the High Council blamed one species for all of it: humanity. Commander Jothic, now demoted to ship commander after his failures at Earth, reviewed intelligence reports in his modest quarters. The news was not good. The coalition had established defensive networks around vulnerable worlds. They shared technology freely, something the Korthax had never done with their subjects. Human engineers were teaching other species how to build particle beam weapons, kinetic mines, and advanced sensor systems. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the Korthax were on the wrong side of that shift. A summons arrived from the High Council. Jothic read it with a sinking feeling. They were calling every military commander to the homeworld for an emergency session. That could only mean one thing. The Empire was preparing for total war. The council chamber was packed with warriors when Jothic arrived, hundreds of commanders representing every Korthax military division. Supreme Commander Vakthul stood at the center, his aged form somehow seeming more massive than ever. "Warriors of the Empire," Vakthul's voice echoed through the stone chamber. "For 12,000 years, we have ruled the Eastern Spiral. Our ancestors conquered hundreds of worlds and built the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known. But now, because of one primitive species, everything we have built is threatened." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled commanders. "The humans and their coalition mock us," Vakthul continued. "They spread lies about Korthax aggression. They turn our subjects against us. They steal our rightful dominion. This cannot stand. War Mistress Shakira stepped forward. The Council has made a decision. We will mobilize the entire Imperial fleet. Every battlecruiser, every carrier, every vessel capable of combat. We will crush the Coalition and make an example of Earth. The humans will learn what happens when you defy the Korthax. The chamber erupted in war cries. Warriors roared their approval, eager for battle and vengeance. But Jathic remained silent, his mind calculating the reality behind the rhetoric. "How many ships?" he asked loudly, cutting through the noise. The chamber went quiet. Vakthul's eyes fixed on him. 2,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled. And the Coalition? Approximately 1,500 vessels, according to our intelligence. Jathic nodded slowly. And their quality? They are inferior to Korthax ships, Shakira said sharply. Species like the Vaxil and Dren have never been warriors. The humans are still learning space combat. We will sweep them aside. With respect, War Mistress, the humans have defeated us twice. They have shared their weapons technology with the entire Coalition. Underestimating them again would be a mistake. Are you suggesting we show weakness? Vakthul demanded. I'm suggesting we show wisdom. Jathic stepped forward, facing the entire council. The humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. They don't follow predictable patterns. They improvise, they adapt, and they're willing to accept casualties we would consider catastrophic, and now they've taught those tactics to 16 other species. Then we will teach them the price of defiance, Vakthul said. The Empire votes for war. Prepare your vessels. We strike in 2 months. Jathic bowed and left the chamber, but his thoughts were troubled. The Empire was making the same mistake again. They saw the humans as primitives who had gotten lucky twice. They didn't understand what they were really facing. 2 months later, the Korthax Imperial fleet gathered at the edge of Coalition space. 2,000 warships, representing the full might of an empire that had never truly been challenged. The armada was so large it took 3 hours just to complete the hyperspace jumps into Coalition territory. Supreme Commander Vakthul himself had taken command, determined to oversee the final victory personally. Jathic commanded a squadron of 20 battlecruisers on the fleet's left flank. He watched the tactical displays with growing unease. The Coalition fleet is assembling to meet us, Dravik reported. He had remained loyal to Jathic despite the demotion. Approximately 1,600 vessels. They're forming up near a star system the humans call Proxima Centauri. That's one of their colony systems, Jathic noted. Why make a stand there instead of Earth? Unknown. But Admiral Chen is commanding their fleet. Of course she was. Jathic had spent 3 years studying everything available about the human admiral. She had fought in 3 major wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. She had written papers on military strategy that were now being studied across the Coalition. She was, without question, the most dangerous opponent the Korthax had ever faced. The Imperial fleet advanced in perfect formation, a wall of military might that stretched across hundreds of kilometers of space. As they approached Proxima Centauri, the Coalition fleet came into visual range. It was smaller than the Korthax force, but it looked different than Jathic expected. The human ships had been upgraded, their hulls reinforced with new alloys. The Vaxil vessels bristled with weapon systems they had never possessed before. The entire Coalition fleet had been standardized and improved. They've been preparing, Dravik said quietly. As have we, Vakthul's voice came over the fleet command channel. All vessels, battle formation. Prepare to attack. Today we restore the Empire to its rightful dominance. The Korthax fleet opened fire first. 2,000 ships unleashing their weapons simultaneously created a storm of energy that lit up space like a newborn sun. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and missile barrages converged on the Coalition fleet. But the Coalition didn't try to dodge. Their shields lit up, absorbing the massive bombardment. Ships took damage, some were destroyed, but the line held. Then they returned fire. The weapons that hit the Korthax fleet were beyond anything Jothic had seen before. The particle beams had been improved, now capable of punching through shields in a single sustained burst. New weapons appeared, devices that generated gravitational anomalies that crushed ships like paper. Missile systems deployed warheads that didn't explode but released clouds of nanomachines that ate through armor and systems. "What is happening?" Vakthul demanded as the casualty reports flooded in. "How do they have these weapons?" "The humans have been reverse engineering captured Korthax technology," Jothic reported, analyzing the data. "They've combined it with their own innovations and shared everything with the Coalition. They've had 3 years to prepare while we've been mobilizing. 3 years where humanity's best scientists worked with 16 other species to develop weapons specifically designed to counter Korthax ships. Then we overwhelmed them with numbers," Vakthul ordered. "All vessels, full assault!" The Imperial fleet surged forward, abandoning formation in favor of a massive charge. 2,000 ships against 1,600. The Korthax still had numerical superiority. They still had the advantage. But the Coalition had humanity. The human ships broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the Korthax center, directly at Vakthul's flagship. The other Coalition species followed, each fleet targeting a different section of the Imperial formation. They didn't fight as one unified force. They fought as 17 different groups, each using tactics suited to their strengths, each adapting to the chaos of battle. The Korthax, by contrast, fought as they always had, following orders, maintaining formations, executing strategies that had worked for thousands of years. It wasn't enough. The human ships cut through the Korthax center like knives, their weapons hammering at flagships and command vessels. The Vaxil used their smaller, faster ships to harass the Korthax flanks, drawing fire away from heavier vessels. The Dren deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons that disabled Korthax systems without destroying ships, leaving them vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Every Coalition species contributed something unique to the battle. The humans had taught them that warfare wasn't about following a single strategy. It was about using every advantage, every trick, every unconventional approach available. Jothic watched his squadron take heavy losses as Vaxil fighters swarmed his position. He ordered his ships to break formation and scatter, using their superior individual firepower to drive off the attackers. It worked, but it also pulled his squadron away from the main battle. That's when he realized the Coalition's real strategy. "They're not trying to destroy the fleet," he transmitted urgently to Vakthul. "They're fragmenting it, separating our forces into smaller groups that can't support each other. Supreme Commander, you need to—" The transmission cut off. Jothic's sensors showed why. Vakthul's flagship had taken critical damage. Multiple human ships had converged on it, their particle beams cutting through the massive vessel's defenses. Secondary explosions blossomed across its hull. "Supreme Commander is down," Dravik reported grimly. "Command structure is collapsing. Multiple squadrons are requesting orders." Jothic faced an impossible decision. He was just a squadron commander now, but someone had to take charge. "All Korthax vessels, this is Commander Jothic. Regroup at my coordinates. Form defensive positions and prepare to retreat." "Retreat?" Several commanders protested simultaneously. The Supreme Commander ordered, "The Supreme Commander is dead," Jothic snapped. "And if we don't withdraw now, this entire fleet will be destroyed. Follow my orders or die. Your choice." Slowly, the surviving Korthax ships began to pull back, forming defensive clusters. The Coalition fleet didn't pursue aggressively. They had achieved their objective. The Imperial fleet had been broken. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every Korthax command screen. She looked exhausted, covered in soot and minor injuries, but her voice was strong. "Commanders of the Korthax fleet," she said, "you have a choice to make. Continue this battle and we will destroy every one of your ships, or withdraw, return to your territory, and agree to peace negotiations. The Coalition doesn't want to annihilate the Korthax. We just want you to stop conquering and enslaving other species. You've killed our Supreme Commander, one of the other commanders transmitted angrily. We will never— Your Supreme Commander brought a fleet to our space and attacked us, Chen interrupted. We defended ourselves. That's not murder. That's war. And if you want this war to continue, we'll accommodate you. But understand this. You cannot win. Not because you lack courage or strength, but because you're fighting for an empire. We're fighting for our homes, our families, our right to exist free from domination. Which cause do you think produces more motivated soldiers? Jathik transmitted directly to Chen. What guarantee do we have that you'll honor peace negotiations? The same guarantee you gave us when you first arrived at Earth, Chen replied. Our word. The difference is, we actually mean it. The Coalition doesn't want territory or tribute. We want peaceful coexistence, trade, cultural exchange, cooperation against common threats. Novel concepts for the Korthax, I know, but they work remarkably well. Jathik studied his tactical displays. The Imperial fleet had lost nearly 800 ships. The Coalition had lost approximately 400. The Korthax still outnumbered them, but barely, and the Coalition had momentum and morale on their side. I accept your terms, Jathik said. On behalf of the Imperial fleet, we will withdraw and agree to negotiations. Several other commanders protested, but Jathik silenced them. The Empire has existed for 12,000 years. It will not end today because we had the wisdom to stop fighting a losing battle. Warriors know when to attack and when to retreat. Today, we retreat. The remaining Korthax ships formed up and began the long journey back to their territory. As they left Coalition space, Jathik reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. The Korthax Empire had challenged a single species. They had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant and taught that giant to share its weapons with the galaxy. Humanity had done more than defeat the Korthax. They had shown other species that resistance was possible, that empires could be challenged, that cooperation could defeat conquest. The negotiations took 6 months. Representatives from every coalition species met with Korthax diplomats in neutral space. The resulting treaty was unprecedented in galactic history. The Korthax Empire would maintain its core territories, the worlds that had been Korthax before their age of expansion. But they would release all conquered worlds and allow those species to choose their own futures. They would pay reparations to species they had enslaved. They would open their borders to trade and cultural exchange. In exchange, the Coalition would share defensive technology and offer the Korthax membership in the alliance as equals, not as conquerors. Many Korthax warriors saw the treaty as humiliating, but Jathik, who had been promoted to the new High Council after the battle, saw it differently. The Empire had survived. They had learned that strength came not just from conquest, but from cooperation. It would take generations for the Korthax to fully adapt to this new reality, but they would adapt. Survival demanded it. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in a memorial garden dedicated to the humans who had died defending their world and the Coalition. Thousands of names were carved into black stone, each one representing a life sacrificed for freedom. You changed everything, a voice said behind her. She turned to find Jathik standing there, his forearms folded in a gesture she had learned meant respect. You risked your career to save your fleet, Chen replied. That took courage. I learned from watching humans, Jathik admitted. You fight with a creativity and determination we never developed. The Korthax became so powerful that we forgot how to adapt. We conquered everyone we met, so we never learned cooperation. You taught us those lessons. Expensive lessons. All important lessons are expensive. Jathik looked at the memorial. My people have never honored fallen enemies before. We saw them as obstacles, not as people. Another thing we're learning from humanity. Chen nodded. The galaxy is better for that learning. Maybe in a few generations, the Korthax and humans will be allies instead of former enemies. Perhaps. Jathik turned to leave, then paused. Admiral Chen, may I ask you something? When we first arrived at Earth with 3 battle cruisers, were you actually afraid? Chen smiled slightly. Terrified. But fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous, not that it's impossible. Humans learned millions of years ago that the most dangerous predators can be defeated if you're clever enough and determined enough. And if you're willing to sacrifice. That too. Jathik left the garden, his mind processing everything he had learned. The Korthax had been the galaxy's apex predator for 12,000 years. They had forgotten that evolution never stops, that new challenges always emerge, that adaptation is the only true constant. A single alien species had challenged humanity. In response, humanity had adapted, fought back, and created an alliance that reshaped the galaxy. The Korthax had suffered not just military defeat, but something more profound. They had suffered the destruction of their worldview. They had believed that power meant conquest, that strength meant domination, that the strong ruled the weak. Humanity had proven that cooperation, creativity, and determination could defeat raw power. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps in time, that would be a good thing for everyone, even the Korthax. The memorial garden stood quiet under Earth's sun, a reminder of the price of freedom and the courage required to defend it. Admiral Chen remained there for a long time, reading names and remembering faces. These people had died so that humanity and dozens of other species could live free. It was a price worth paying, but it was also a price that should never be forgotten. Somewhere in deep space, a new species was taking its first steps into the galaxy, building its first starships, dreaming its first dreams of what lay beyond its atmosphere. They didn't know yet that the galaxy had changed. They didn't know that a coalition existed to protect new spacefaring species from exploitation, but they would learn. And when they did, they would hear the story of how humanity had been challenged by an empire, had refused to submit, and had built something better in the ruins of that empire's arrogance. The story would become legend. The legend would inspire new species, and the galaxy would continue to evolve, to grow, to improve. All because one species had challenged humanity and learned too late that humans don't accept defeat. They adapt, they fight, they endure, and eventually they win. That was the lesson the Korthax learned. That was the price they paid for their challenge. And that was just the beginning of humanity's impact on the galaxy.